Hi, I'm Nathan Colliner. This is intended as a third video in the playlist, What Do We Care About When We Care About Ethics? It's time now to focus on the various ethical theories. There's a lot of ethical theories out there in the world. I want to talk about, just get a list of them going and like how they're similar to each other, how they're different from each other, and hopefully that'll give us a real solid basis as a way to think about them critically. So in my list I have 10. That's not a magic list. Other people who practice ethics, who teach ethics, have lists that are maybe slightly longer, slightly shorter. I think this list of 10 is pretty good. So the first three that I want to talk about, the one, divine command theory. So as the name suggests, this is about what a divine source, that is to say God usually, commands, okay? So let's just keep murder as an example here. Why is murder wrong? Well, in divine command theory, murder is wrong because God said murder is wrong. Thou shalt not murder. That's what makes murder wrong. Similar to that is cultural relativism. So it's no longer a divine source, but it's like a cultural tradition or the cultural elders or something like that. So we can ask our question again. What's wrong with murder? So the answer from cultural relativism would be something like, my culture forbids murder. In my culture, the tradition is that murder is wrong, and that's what makes it wrong, is because my culture thinks it's wrong. And then thirdly, ethical subjectivism, which is not about a cultural tradition, it's not about a divine source, but it's about me, right? So why is murder wrong? Well, because I personally find murder horrifying. I don't like it. I think it's a terrible thing, and that's what makes it wrong, is because it's wrong for me. I think I'm listening these three theories together because I think they're of a kind. Namely, they're all about approval, okay? The only difference between these three theories is who is doing the approving or disapproving. So sometimes you disapprove of something, right? So in divine command theory, it's God. In cultural relativism, it's my cultural tradition or elders. In ethical subjectivism, it's me, right? So those theories are all about something is right because it's approved of, or something is wrong because it's disapproved of. Our second list starts out with utilitarianism and deontology. So those are pretty famous ethical theories. Almost any ethical, well, probably any ethics course you take will spend some time working on those two theories. I'll say more about them later. And then this third theory, I have a question mark there because it's a really, really important theory, probably the most influential theory out of all the ethical theories, but somehow, bizarrely, it never got a name. It's the idea that people are, by nature, equal to each other. It's the basis of a lot of religious ethics. It's the basis of the United States Constitution. John Locke wrote about this, and then it made its way into the Declaration. It's the basis of Martin Luther King Jr.'s ethical teaching, the United Declaration of Human Rights. So it's a really important, influential theory, this idea that people are equal to me, and that creates obligations for how I treat other people, but it has no name. Okay, these three theories are also of a kind, because I think they're all about justice. Now, I'm not so arrogant that I'm defining justice right now. That's a very difficult thing to do, but I just want to say I think what justice implies, what justice requires, is that I act in such a way that I'm taking other people's well-being into account. I'm caring about other people's well-being. So the difference between these theories, I mean, there's a lot of differences, of course, but the most basic difference is what creates that set of obligations for me? What creates those boundaries for me? For utilitarianism, it's that other people have the potential to suffer or to be happy, right? And so just that truth means that I have to act in such a way that I'm not creating suffering, and as much as possible that I am actually creating happiness in the world. But the fact that other people, and also non-human animals, any beings that can suffer, that means that I have a moral obligation about how I should treat them. For deontology, they would agree that there's something true about other people that creates a moral obligation for me. But the deontologist wants to say that, look, if you think that's happiness, you're going to get yourself into trouble. And so there's some very famous fights between utilitarianism and deontology. For deontology, it's not that people could suffer, it's that people are autonomous. Right? So the fact that other people can have their own values, they have their own goals, they can do things in their own way. Just that feature of other people means that I have to respect that about them. I have to not use them as a means to my end, but respect them as an end in themselves. Okay, so because people are autonomous beings, that means that I have to respect that about them. And that's the basis of a lot of human rights talk. And then equality theory would say the same thing, but instead of autonomy or happiness, they're going to focus on the fact that all people are equal. Like the fact that other people are equal to me means that I can't treat them as superior to me or inferior to me. That would be morally wrong because that would be a violation of what's true by nature. So, again, these three theories are all about other people, what's true about other people. What is required about how I treat other people and think about their well-being. So I'm going to call them justice-based morality. Another list, contractarianism and virtue ethics. And these theories will also almost always, if not always, make their way into standard ethics courses. Contractarianism, the root word there is contract. And the idea is that ethics comes from a social contract. So there's a social contract because I made the rational decision to enter into one. It would be irrational of me to say that, well, I'm just going to live out in nature and do whatever I want to do, including killing people or stealing from them. The problem with that is that other people could kill me or steal from me. So I make the rational decision to give up some of my rights, but what I get back is some peace and security. I say, hey, we're going to mutually promise each other that we will treat each other well, that we won't kill each other, we won't steal each other, and then whatever the other ethical requirements are, and then we all agree on that. That's the social contract, and that is where ethics comes from, according to contractarianism. Virtue ethics is a very, very rich tradition. There's many cultures that have traditions of virtue ethics, and so it's very, very difficult to just say, like, hey, here's the basics. Here's my best attempt. Humbly, I'll say this. Okay, so here's what we know. Here's what we've known since we were little kids, is that my character, the kind of person that I am, the inside of me, the internal, so to speak, influences my behavior, the external, like what's outside, okay? So character influences behavior. Internal influences external. Okay, so that's old news. We've kind of all agreed about that since we were very, very young. Virtue ethics doesn't have any problem with that. But what they want to add to that is that, look, it is true that the internal influences the external. Your character influences your behavior. But it's also true that your behavior influences your character. The kind of person that you are, that you're becoming, can be changed by the kinds of things that you participate in, the kinds of things that you do, the kinds of habits that you form. So you need to be very thoughtful and intentional about the kind of behaviors that you engage in. Again, virtue ethics is a very rich theory spanning many cultures, so I don't want to say that's what virtue ethics is, but I think that explains a very large part of the logic of virtue ethics. So again, these theories are in a family together. I call them the prudence family. Prudence is a fantastic word. It's fallen out of favor. I am trying to bring it back. Okay, so here's how I'll try to explain it. Prudence is like the good cousin of selfishness. Okay, selfishness is the bad cousin. Here's how I'll explain it. Let's say I am about ready to walk down the stairs, and I look down and realize that my shoes are untied, and I decide to tie them. Was what I did selfish? Well, like in a literal sense, I was just caring about myself. I was focused on myself, so it's selfish. But also you can recognize that selfish isn't the right word for what happened there, right? I did a smart thing. I did a wise thing by tying my shoes before I walked down the stairs. So what I would say is that what you did was prudent, right? It was something that you did for the sake of your own well-being that makes a lot of sense, that you should have done, that other people should have done. Contractarianism and virtue ethics are both like that, okay? So remember the justice-based theories, they started with other people. Like, what's true about other people that creates moral obligations for me? These two theories don't start with other people, they start with myself. But I don't want you to think that that is bad. Like, there's nothing wrong with starting with yourself sometimes. It's just these theories are about caring about and thinking about your own well-being, about what's good for me, what's going to make my life go well. And the last list there are the idea that morality is an invention. So various people throughout history have thought of morality or ethics as an invention of the strong. So my favorite example of this comes from Plato. Plato himself did not believe that about ethics, but he has some very colorful characters that do make that argument. So probably the most memorable is a character named Thrasymachus, who's in the first book of his work, The Republic. So Thrasymachus argues that, look, the people who are in power are the strong, the ones who have seized power, the ones who have taken control. And they're the ones who make laws for us. Okay? These laws are not for our benefit. They seem like they're for our benefit. They seem like they make life go well for us, and they do, but they're actually for the benefit of the powerful. Next step is that when we think about ethics, we end up starting to think about laws because we're thinking about like what's normal, what's good for society, and so our understanding of ethics is kind of like distilled down from laws. So it turns out that ethics is nothing more than the interest of the strong. So, for example, we think that the laws are making our lives go well, but really, the powerful made laws so that we'll, stay in line, we'll keep paying taxes, we'll keep producing foods and widgets, and we'll go and fight in their wars, right? That is what that theory believes. That's where ethics came from. It's just an invention. You could also think of ethics as an invention by the weak. This is something like what Friedrich Nietzsche did. He was not a big fan of a certain kind of, he called it like Christian morality. So in his theory, you have the Roman Empire, you have the Roman soldiers going throughout the world, conquering and colonizing, and then you had these weak Christians. And the Christians just had nothing to their name, like they had no way to stop what was happening until they invented morality. They made up moral rules, and somehow the Roman soldiers took them seriously, and eventually the Christians used that as a way to conquer and take control. So it's still an invention. But it wasn't invented by the strong. It was like the last gasp of the weak. It was their only way to regain power. Okay, so I mentioned the word power a few times, but that's how I think about these things. They're actually very skeptical. Instead of like they're more like theories of morality, like morality doesn't exist. It's just made up. It's a game. If you follow it, you're a sucker because it's made up by somebody else to control you ultimately. All right, so what we have are four what I'm calling families. So we have the justice family. There are three theories there. You could think of morality as an exercise in prudence. There are two theories there. You could think about morality as an exercise in approval. There are three theories there. Or that it's just a power grab. All right, so hopefully this gives some sense and logic to a compare and contrast between the different ethical theories before we move on to our next set where we try to identify which ones are the most useful.